Welcome everyone to the Creative Fridays first session. Before we start, I thought of giving an introduction to myself. So you may be like some of you may already know me, but many of the others might be thinking, who is Abdullah and why should I even listen to this person? Well, for those of you who think so, and for those of you who do not know me, I am Abdullah Jasmine, a second year UCSC undergraduate for computer science. And I'm also the editor at Rotaract UCSC, the publicity director at IEEE, and the design and digital experience specialist in ISAC. Yes, so moving on, many of you may be having the question, like when you think about it, why should you learn design? Like a lot of you may already have a passion in design, but some of you may be just beginners or maybe newbies, so no idea at all. Well, yeah, so basically the reason to learn design is, are you a person who wishes to become more creative and a person who thinks that they can design good content and they can let their imagination run wild and they want to be an amazing person? Well, if you're someone like that, then design is the way to go because design influences what we think. And as you can see in the quote by Benham, it influences the way we feel, the decisions we make. And when design is done very well, it's like you can't distinguish like good design, like you just feel it, it's like an emotion to you, right? So yeah, why learn design? Well, by learning design, like I said before, you can improve your creativity, your innovation, and also it improves your empathy, which is basically your emotional intelligence. And as you all know, we are mostly logical thinkers, right? Like we do programming and stuff like that. So when you do those aspects, you rarely use your right brain. You mostly use your logical part of the brain. So by learning design, you can activate your right part of the brain. And it also allows you to maintain your unique identity and also create eye-catching content. Like you've seen, like many of you would have already noticed, like the post that we posted throughout these past days, like for some of you it may be attractive and for some of you it may not be attractive. But yeah, you get the idea, right? By learning design, you can create somewhat of an attractive and eye-catching content. And yeah, so that's basically about by learning design. And this is something like I like to say a lot because every one of us are not born leaders. Like, you know that, right? Some people say that they're born leaders. For example, some people argue that Mahatma Gandhi and all, he's a born leader. But that's not the true case, actually. Like some of the people have researched and found out that not everyone's born as a leader. Like people attain it along the way. So similar to that, even creativity is somewhat. Everyone's not born creative. Like you have to train yourself to think creatively and to become a creative individual. So that's the basic idea, like through this code. And yeah, talking about what we'll be discussing today. Oh, yeah. So I thought of doing this session in terms of like the planning and campaigning phase because that's something which people rarely focus on. Although that's actually in big marketing campaigns and all, people focus on that the most. Is the planning and campaigning phase. And then we'll be moving on to the design phase, where we'll be discussing the design principles and about how it influences good content making and all of that sort. And finally, we'll be moving on to the content phase, where we'll be discussing about content writing and caption writing and all of those related avenues. And I also thought of providing you some resources to get started, like so that you can start a designing journey. So yeah, let's set the stage for something awesome. Yeah, so moving on to the campaign phase. When we're starting something, we should always start by thinking about the end. Like just randomly starting something is not going to work. When you're starting, especially a campaign or anything, you have to first of all identify who's your target audience. Like, for example, if you take an event where it's for example, an event for education or yeah, so something like a career fair or something. For such an event, the audience is probably students, right? No point of targeting it to grown-ups or even young children, although you can do it. But the most optimal market will be students and undergraduates, right? Yeah, so something similar to that. For example, another good example is like think about a community service project. Like, yeah, your target audience will probably be someone who is physically capable of helping you in the community service project, right? Yeah, so something like that. And also think about brands like Lux or something. Lux target audience is definitely females, right? Lux always, like, look at the Lux advertisements, for example. They're focused advertisements on females, right? Like, they try to show how you can use Lux and become more beautiful. Even Fair and Lovely is the same thing. Yeah, so that's something very important. You should understand who is your target audience. And the next thing is starting with why. Like, most of the campaigns and everything, they start by what it is and then move on to how to do the campaign. And finally, only they talk about why. But Simon Sinek argues that we should start with why first, because, and he relates it to the brain, about how the brain thinks also. Like, by starting with why, you get people who believe in your course, like to join to join the marketing process and to join whatever you want to do. So that's basically how leaders inspire actions, and that's basically what Apple does and whatever successful companies. Even the Wright brothers, they started with why. Even Martin Luther King. Like Simon Sinek says that Martin Luther King said, I have a dream, not I have a plan, right? And all of his sentences were, I believe, right? He never said, we should do this, right? He said, I believe that this should happen. So basically, he's creating a course so that you guys can join with his course. Like, he's not talking about what's happening. He's talking about why he believes it should happen. So that's what's important. Like, that's how you get the best audience to join with you. And that's also very important when you're getting members for a club or when members for an event, or basically anything to do with leadership and marketing. The next thing, important thing, is selecting an appropriate theme. For example, think about the general meeting theme. The general meeting theme was basically a circle, right? Like, I don't know whether I'll show it in late upcoming slides. Yeah, so basically it's a gradient, a simple gradient pattern, and the focus is on the text general meeting, right? Yeah, so that's basically our theme for the general meeting. And even thinking about Creative Fridays, everything was dark theme. Like, some people even asked why we are going dark. Yeah, so basically we thought of going for a dark. I thought of going for a dark theme because I thought that that's going to be more appropriate with this, and to show that basically it can be anything. Like, it's something like a black box experience, which I don't think you'll get, but yeah, something like that. The next important part is setting up objectives, KPIs, and strategy. The objectives should be specific. You should be able to measure it also. Like, it should have some percentage, some sort of numerical value, which you can measure it. And it should be attainable. Like, you should be able to achieve that objective which you set. And also it should be relevant to what you're planning to do. Like, for example, if you're talking about books and you bring an objective for something like food, it's not very relevant, is it? So something like that. And it should be timely. Like, for example, you should set a time period. Some, like, objectives are generally short term, like, and not long term. Strategies and mission statements and all are more of a long term sort of thing. And the next thing is KPIs. So KPIs are your key performance indicators. Like, KPIs filling time, you can understand how well you have achieved your targets and all. So KPIs may be number of signups, number of content written, something like that. Any of that sort, something which you can measure. And the last thing is strategy. Now, in terms of strategy, like, let me say one thing which we did in Rotaract, like for the Facebook page and Instagram pages. We thought of tagging the people who did the designs and the content. So by doing that, we sort of giving a more boosted reach to the content, right? Like, because when you tag the people who designed the post and who wrote the captions for the post, like, it gets recommended in their pages as well. So it gets a sort of a snowball effect. It keeps rolling on its own. Like, you don't actually have to do much of an effort. And finally, it's about creating the marketing timeline. So this marketing timeline shows you when you have to post content. Like, for example, a happening today post should go on the day that the event's happening, and a happening tomorrow post should go on the previous date. So all of those dates, you drop it to a marketing timeline so that you know that you should make this post and this content before the specific date. Yes, so talking about an actual marketing plan. In an actual marketing plan, there's a marketing research section where we do a SWOT analysis. So SWOT analysis is basically understanding your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. Threats may be in the form of external environment, like competitors, and even, for example, the current fuel crisis. That is a major threat for all of our activities, which is why we are going for a more virtual premise. And opportunities may be For example, something like a new technology coming, which makes it easier for us to handle communications or something. That is a very good opportunity for us. And opportunities may be some good quality signups which we may get, and some good partnerships which we may get. Yeah, those are some really good opportunities. Opportunities and threats are external environment factors. Strength and weaknesses are what belongs to us. So some examples for strength are a good member base is one good example. Good leadership is another good example for a strength. In terms of weaknesses, you can say something like if the membership is not very supportive and cooperative, that is sort of a weakness. So something like that is what happens in a SWOT analysis. You analyze both your strength, weaknesses, and your opportunities and threats, both the internal environment and external environmental factors. And then there's another form of market research. Actually, there are a lot more, but another popular thing is PESTEL. PESTEL is basically political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors. So political factors affect mainly the government stability and all of those sorts. Economic factors include the current financial situations and all of that. Social is basically how the society thinks and everything to do with the society and the cultures. Social, and then there's technological. So all of the changes in technology. For example, 3 years ago, Zoom wasn't such a popular software, but once the COVID crisis came, Zoom boosted in the market, and Zoom became something which we use almost every day. So that is something to do with the technological environment. If not for Zoom, I don't think we'll be able to have a lot of meetings and all of that. So those are technological environment related factors. And then there's legal factors, something like the laws and the legislations of the country. And finally, the environmental factors. So basically, to do with the environment and the environmental laws and anything to do with the environment. That's the basic idea. In terms of strategies, there are some strategies. Like, for example, there's a popular strategy called marketing mix. I'll be discussing it later on as well. But the marketing mix focuses on price, place, promotion, people, publication, and some process also. Yeah, there are seven P's. I'll be discussing it on the later slides as well. Yeah. And then we have the goals and objectives, like what we want to achieve through the marketing campaign. And the objectives, like I said before, it should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. And we also should discuss about the budget. But actually, budget for most of our cases is mainly zero because it's all virtually. But other than that, if it's a physical sort of an event, actually there are some budget and some money which have to be spent to do those events. And then we have the implementation and action plan about how we are going to do the event and the marketing campaign. And also evaluation and control. So we use KPIs and all of those factors to check whether we have achieved it. And also we come up with some backup plans to mitigate the losses and the issues that we face while doing the campaigns. And yeah, the schedule, how we're going to schedule the post, like I said before. Yes, so talking about identifying target market. Now, this is going to be something interactive. I thought of getting your opinion. So what do you guys think? Like, you guys can unmute and talk. I think I mentioned before about Lux, but yeah, Atlas book and ProMate book. Like, what's the target market for Atlas book? Anyone? What do you guys think? Who is the target market for Atlas book?
Students.
Okay, cool. Any other answers?
Students, but with the different price categories in mind.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Yes, so like Lukman and Prashant and Vinupha said, yes, it's students who are the target market. But yeah, like Vinupha said, actually students with a more of a budget sort of mentality will go for an Atlas book. And on the other hand, ProMate is kind of a premium sort of book, right? Like look at the price difference between Atlas and ProMate. Like there's a huge difference, right? So yeah, the target market for both of these books, even though both are actually books, right? The target market is different. Yeah, and then moving on to Lux. Lux I mentioned before, it's basically female who are more beauty conscious. But what about Lifebuoy? What do you guys think? Lifebuoy is sort of a product which focuses on germs, right? They try to show that they can protect against 99% of germs. So they are more of a health sort of a product. And Dettol is also another example. But Dettol is a bit more priced than Lifebuoy. At least that's what some people say. But yeah. So Dettol and Lifebuoy are sort of more towards the health type of factor. And then moving on to Milo. So what about Milo? What do you guys think?
Sports.
Okay, that's a good answer. We can accept that. So Milo, like they show that they are more of a sporty type of a brand, but actually their target audience is more like children, right? Like they try to promote message like you can drink this and become more sporty, but they're targeting mostly children, right? That's the main idea. Like they're trying to show that if children drink this, like they can be more active and more energetic. So that's basically their target audience. Rich Life, on the other hand, is more of a family type of a milk brand, right? Like they're trying to promote their fresh milk series, and recently only they launched a flavored milk sort of department. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically the difference between Milo and Rich Life. And then yeah, something very much more exciting. What about MacBook? What do you guys think? This you guys should know actually.
Students, I guess.
Okay, that's actually kind of true, but yeah. Any other answers? MacBook. Who do you think is the target market?
I think MacBook is more targeted towards professionals, while the Asus ROG would be targeted more towards gamers.
Yeah, that's actually correct. Like MacBook, their main target is creative professionals. Like they try to show that they can get better render times and better. It's more graphic friendly, and even the displays and all, like it's much higher quality than Windows. Even the sound experience and everything, like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to cater towards the creative professionals, the designers, the video editors, like that type of an industry. And also, yeah, professionals also they target by showing that it's a premium type of product. But yeah, the main target is creative professionals and somewhat professionals. And the MacBook Air actually is targeting students. Yes, they're targeting more of the casual users. Yeah. And yeah, ROG is targeting gamers, like Windows 7. And yeah, Toyota and Lamborghini, I think it's very obvious. Toyota is more of a family sort of a business, although they have expensive cars like Lexus and even the SUVs like Land Cruiser Sahara and all. Like those are really high priced, but actually their main target is family, like trying to be an economical vehicle. Lamborghini, on the other hand, is more targeting towards being a sort of a sporty and a premium vehicle, right? Yeah, so that's basically the idea and the difference between each of these companies. Like, just to give you an idea about how you identify the target market, that's the main objective of this part. What do you think about our audience? Like, who is our target market? Any answers?
You're asking who our target audience is, right?
Yes, as in who we like, who are the people we are doing the campaigns and all of the sub activities and all for?
Yeah, so the undergraduates and people of the university.
Okay, that's one answer. Any other answers?
Rotractors who want to be creative.
I'm not talking about this event, but in general, actually. Lukman, so what do you think in general?
People who want to do a service to the community.
Okay, that's another answer. But you guys actually seem to miss something very crucial. Like, what do you think? Like,
Teenagers?
okay, that's another answer, but actually, that's not what I was expecting. It's actually youth. Like, we are targeting young people, right? Like, for even community service projects and all, the main audience is youth, right? Any other projects, even the main audience is youth. Professional development, international relations, whatever you take it. Like you're not going targeting grown-ups, right? Mainly, like all of our campaigns and everything. Even you guys will be more willing to work with youth, young people, right? So yeah, that's our target market. But depending on the events and depending on what we're targeting, it may change. Like sometimes it's only general, it's also general public. Like for example, the beach cleanup. Like we try to invite as many people as possible to make it more fun and enjoying, right? So we invite even adults and grown-ups. So we don't care who comes and joins us, right? So yeah, it's sometimes general public, and sometimes it's Rotaractors only. For example, think about Slam. Slam is an event which is done by other faculties except us up to now. But yeah, so Slam is an event which is focusing mainly on Rotaractors, right? And for talk about Creative Fridays, who's our target audience? Only Rotaract UCSC for now, right? Except the YouTube series, which is going to be targeting everyone else as well. But our main audience is Rotaract UCSC. Like, although it's youth, it's subclass into Rotaract UCSC factor, right? So yeah, that's our target market. Yes. And yeah, teenagers, but actually teenagers, no, never think like you can't call us teenagers anymore. And undergraduates, yeah, somewhat close. Yeah. So anyway, close enough. But yeah, it's mainly youth. Like we are still a youth organization. Yeah. Because our membership is also from 18 to upwards, right? Yeah, that's the idea. Yes, and like I said before, starting with why. So, like I think you would have noticed a very popular event recently had a campaign. Like they started basically by saying what, how, and why, right? Like I won't mention the name of the event, but yeah, I think you can find it on your own. This is what ordinary people do. But what successful people do is starting with why, and then they move to how, and then what. This is Simon Sinek, and he's the person who came up with this idea. Like this is another quote which he said as well. Like you'll understand this when watching the video. I'll show you just 3 minutes to 6 minutes from this because I believe that you should watch it on your own. That's 90 minutes and it's very worth it. Like if you want to be a good leader and a good marketer, this is the best video to watch.
We assume even we know why we do what we do. But then how do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions? For example, why is Apple so innovative? Year after year after year after year, they're more innovative than all their competition. And yet they're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have the same access to the same talent, the same agencies, the same consultants, the same media. Then why is it that they seem to have something different? Why is it that Martin Luther King led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only man who suffered in a pre-civil rights America, and he certainly wasn't the only great orator of the day. Why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered manned flight when there were certainly other teams who were better qualified, better funded, and they didn't achieve powered manned flight, and the Wright brothers beat them to it? There's something else at play here. About 3.5 years ago, I made a discovery, and this discovery profoundly changed my view on how I thought the world worked, and it even profoundly changed the way in which I operate in it. As it turns out, there's a pattern. As it turns out, all the great and inspiring leaders and organizations in the world, whether it's Apple or Martin Luther King or the Wright brothers, they all think, act, and communicate the exact same way, and it's the complete opposite to everyone else. All I did was codify it. And it's probably the world's simplest idea. I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we're better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You ready to buy a computer from me? All I did was reverse the order of the information. People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried.
So by starting with why, basically, you're getting a more sincere audience and a more people who actually believe in your audience. So they'll work with their sweat and blood, like people who you pay to work for you. Like people who work with their sweat and blood are more engaging and more likely to work harder for your organization. So that's the idea. Like instead of starting with what, how, and why, you start with why they should do it, and then move to how they do it and what it is basically. By starting with, like he said before, a lot of people know what they are doing and about how they are doing it, right? But a lot of people don't think about why they are doing it. Like for example, let me ask you a question. Why are you guys in Rotaract?
I guess to do some community service.
Okay. So, yeah, that's actually a good point.
To get some new experience and learn something new.
Yeah. So as you can see, like when you understand why you're doing something, like you believe more into that purpose and you're more and more willing to commit to it, right? So you kind of build a bond with the thing which you're working with. So which is why you should start with why first. Why you should do it. Like even with the campaign, you should start with why they should join the campaign. Why should they join the event, for example. And lastly, only like you should another good example is like, for example, Creative Fridays, yesterday's post. I completely changed the caption idea because I changed it to a way where we start with why. Like the question we asked was, are you a person who believes in designing? Something in that lines, right? So we started with why, like we're giving them a reason to join, like telling them why they should join the event. And then we're saying how they can join this event, like how they can become a good designer. That is by joining the event as well. And finally, only we reveal what the event is. So that's the best way to do a campaign. Like that way you build a better bond with the people. Yeah. And like Simon Sinek said in his speech, the goal is not to sell to people who need what you have, but to sell to people that believe what you believe. Like you try to build a following, like kind of like cult, but not in that terms. But yeah, that's the idea. Like when you do it that way, you get people who work with their blood and sweat, unlike people who work for money, who are not going to be as efficient as people who work with their blood and sweat. Yeah, that's basically about starting with why. And I'll include this link in the end of this session as well, so that you guys can go and watch it. It's definitely a worth watch. So please do go and watch it. Yes, and Simon Sinek says later on in his speech, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, it will affect those who believe what you believe. Like that's like I said before. We are trying to get people who believe in our cause. We don't want anyone else. We want people who are actually aligning with us. Like that way, we can make it more optimized and more focused. So that's basically the idea of it. And now moving on to the next part of marketing, which is choosing the right team. Like in order to make it more attractive and relatable to the people, like they should feel like joining something, right? So we should choose something, a proper theme for it to make it more relatable. Let me give you some examples. Like this is a story-driven design campaign. I think some of you may know about OGT Summit, but OGT Summit, like we did an Aquaman theme. Like we kind of brought the story like Atlantis is in danger, and we needed the people's help to kind of resave Atlantis. So that was the campaign idea behind OGT Summit. So all of the posts and campaigns were in line with that. And talking about Read Extreme, like it was basically showing about how an egg becomes a dinosaur, a dragon actually. So all of the campaigns were gradually like the egg hatching and becoming a dragon. Like, so I didn't include all of the posts because I couldn't find them. But yeah, So that's kind of the idea. Like you can see, it's kind of a very progressive. So like it gets a curiosity of people, right? And even IEEE, like it started with something like the old age. Yeah. So basically, Dracula is there, Alice is there, and there's Frankenstein and Robin Hood here. So basically, it kind of like you can see something like a fractal ripping, right? Showing like an alternate reality. And finally, we reached to this. So the design campaign was basically about that. Like we kind of build a story and we brought it towards the end. And even this thing, like I'll be discussing this post campaign later on as well in the caption section. But yeah, it's basically about showing the Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park, I think many of you know, right? Like they find dinosaur DNA and then they experiment on it and then they build a park and the park is open. So that's basically the concept I use for this. So that way but it requires very much more planning, but it's very attractive and eye-catching, right? Like people get more curious about what's going to happen next. And yeah, that increases engagement automatically. Moving on to the next type of events, like these are kind of entertainment theme designs. Like, for example, we did something like Tenet. So basically the campaign was like an inverted sort of thing. Like you can see the word meeting is opposite, right? And even Tenet, the protagonist is basically in red and blue. Like that's the basic idea of the movie. So if you have watched the movie, you'll get what I'm saying. But other than that, I don't think you will get what I'm saying. But yeah, so that was the plan of that campaign. And even we did a Comic-Con thing. Like the Comic-Con, basically it's comic characters. So we try to, it's actually not a story per se. It's more into pop culture references and stuff. Even this, like you can see that this is the Shrek logo and DreamWorks animation. Like basically that I remodeled as a logo. And then this was IEEE, the induction thing was based on Tron. Tron is also another very sci-fi movie, which was in 1980s actually, and even 2000s. Like it was a very popular movie. Like, and look at the Tron aesthetics, like the aesthetics are very beautiful. Like, so we basically use that theme for it. Like, so these are all pop culture references, basically. They do not serve as a story, but they like these are still relatable to you. Like, you know, by seeing this, for example, that this is Shrek, and you know that this is Comic-Con. Like, without actually this text, you still know that this is going to be Comic-Con, right? Like, because there's all of the characters, like something like a multiverse. Yeah. And it's like I said before, it does not tell a story, and it's not exactly progressive. It's just a theme, but still it's entertainment. So you kind of build a relative nature to it. And then the theme designs, like these are basically just colors and designs which you use together. Like look at the general meeting, for example. Like it's basically, like I said before, it's circles and a gradient pattern, like varying gradients. Like that's the basic idea we had when doing this thing. And even the Rotaract District Assembly, and even SLAM, which I hope probably next year will be a part of SLAM. But yeah, this is basically 2022 SLAM. It was only for the other faculties in our university. Like you can see, it's mainly focusing on the content, right? There's no theme elements or anything like that, right? It's very consistent, as you can see. Like the word general meeting is very much highlighted in all of this posts. So consistency is very much there in it. But it's not that relatable to you, right? Like, of course, in terms of aesthetics, it may be related. Like you may get a feeling about it, but other than that, you kind of don't have an exact idea about it, right? So, but these are actually more useful for something like a professional or a formal event. Whereas the theme, the entertainment team designs and story-driven designs are more for casual events, because most of the formal and professional events, you can't actually make it very much entertainment-based, but you can try incorporating a story. Again, it's up to the designer and the marketing team to do it. But yeah, these are just some ideas. Like these are actually not formal definitions or anything, just some of my ideas, like I feel about how a campaign should be perfected. Yes, and moving on to the strategies, objectives, and KPIs. And like I said before, the marketing mix basically contains about the product. So the product, for example, take an event like a career fair. Like the product is the career fair, right? The price, no, actually, also it includes the price of the entrance fee, for example. Generally, in a career fair, it's free, but yeah, that's about the price. Promotion is about how we are getting the message to the audience. Places where we're going to have the event. The packaging would be the event again, because there's no physical package. Positioning would be like where we position it in the map. Like along with, we have to look at our competitors when you are doing a marketing campaign. You cannot live in a well and do a marketing campaign, right? You should see about what your other competitors are doing in a campaign. Like, for example, you should see about what other clubs are doing, like the events they are doing. And you should see about what things they are doing perfectly and what things they are doing wrong. By seeing that, you can improve what we are doing, right? So that's basically how marketing works. Like, you should get an understanding about what's happening in the environment before you do your marketing campaign. And people is basically the audience, the target audience. So that's basically about the marketing mix. And the objective is, like I said before, it should be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And then KPIs. KPIs are the things which you can measure, like the quantifiable attributes. For example, for an event like a career fair, the number of people who are signing up for that event. Something like that is a good KPI. Yeah, so basically that's the idea of strategies, objectives, and KPIs. I just included this so that you guys can get an understanding about marketing, about how it works. Like, this is actually what happens in a real marketing campaign. We do not actually do this much, but let's hope to do it in the future. Yeah, and finally, the timeline. Now, the timeline, many of you may be aware of spreadsheets and milestone charts, right? Like the charts which have a bar, like to show the dates which you have to do it. But now there are more popular tools, like Meta Business Suite is something which Facebook has made for Facebook and Instagram scheduling. Like, this is a very good application to plan and manage all of your Facebook and Instagram campaigns. Like, and there are some other examples, but those are mainly paid examples. So I will not reference them because obviously you cannot. If it incurs a lot of money, I don't think it's a practical object. But yeah, so basically you can use a spreadsheet, a milestone chart, or even Meta Business Suite to plan your campaigns. And yeah, for project management, I think many of you may already know it, and we are using it in the editorial panel as well. There's a software called Trello. And there, when you go to the industry, there are actually more softwares like Jira, and there's a lot more. Slack is a communication network, like they do not use WhatsApp in the industry. But yeah, there are a lot more softwares. So basically, those help to alleviate the planning stage and about the campaigns and everything. So by learning about those tools, like, you can improve the efficiency and you can optimize the whole marketing process. Next, we move on to the design phase, like about how to make our design stand out. Yes, sir. So when you talk about design, there are thousands of principles. Like, there are a lot of principles, and each of these principles have a different reason to be used. Like, but I'll be discussing some of the main principles. So yeah, let's have a go. So I think many of you know about color and contrast, but I'll be talking about some things which you do not know about in all of those things. Like, you'll understand when we go on to the next slides. Okay, so here's another activity. What do you guys think that each of these colors signify?
Okay, so for each of these colors, okay, blue, my favorite color. When I think of blue, it reminds me of tranquility, something calm. I mean, the blue that you have given, the light blue. Green, obviously nature. Purple, games, probably something cool, stuff like that. Red, danger. Pink, girl related, women related stuff, girly stuff, something like that. Orange again, sunsets, maybe. Yeah, so should I say for the rest also?
I think you did pretty good. Okay, cool. So yes, let's move on to the next slide. And yeah, like Krishna said, yes, it's peace and calm. That's something which is very important about blue, and also loyalty and confidence. And green is more about tranquility actually than blue, but yeah, it's about growth, generosity, health, nature. Yeah, all of that sort. Purple is very something of a royal color, like, and yeah, they use it in funs and games. Like, that is kind of a disco theme. Like, yeah, purple is about luxury, like about power basically. And red, yeah, passion, danger, excitement. If you want to get the people more excited, red is a good color to use. And pink, yeah, it's more feminine color and talks about love and kindness, innocence, and all of that sort. Orange, yeah, warmth, like something which you get. And yeah, like the other colors. The last colors are actually sort of neutral colors. Like, these are colors which you can use for basically anything. So each of these colors also have a significance when you think about it. Yeah, so that's basically about colors. Yeah, moving on to Rotaract colors. So in Rotaract, we have three main colors: crimson, black, and white. So yeah, basically we cannot use any other colors other than this for the logos. As you know, pink and red, it's a mix of both of these, which makes crimson. So yeah, it's something along that line. Yeah, and white and black are neutral colors, which can be used for basically anything, and even those have some significance. So that's talking about Rotaract colors. And yeah, so let's look at some events with these colors. For example, career fair, like it's used as a sort of a purple theme, which is because to show like it's a royal kind of an event. Escape was an event organized by the lecturers along with the computer society. Like they tried to make it some sort of fun event, which is why you see some like neon that sort of theme, right? And ReadCon is an event organized by the fourth years, like kind of like an education event, which is why it's very neutral colored theme. So you can understand by looking at these events, like who their target market is and what they're trying to signify by these events, right? So that's about color, basically, some real world examples. And there's a very popular rule, which is also a UI UX rule. It was actually originally an interior design rule, but it later on manipulated and became a UI UX tool as well. It's called 60-30-20, 60-30-10 actually. You can basically swap it around and make it like, yeah, you can see an example here. 60% of the content is blue, that becomes a 60%, and then 30% is a secondary color, and 10% is accent color. And yeah, you can see it in this post as well, right? Like white and this sort of this beige color is kind of acts as a neutral color, and that's the 60%. The black acts as a 30%, and this green acts as the accent color, which is 10%. So this is something else which you can use when do design in post, the 60-30-10 rule, which is becoming very popular in the UI space now. Color is something which is related to emotion. That's what this quote talks about. Color is a power which directly influences the soul. So it's all about your emotions. Like by looking at the colors, you get some sort of an emotion, right? You become emotionally attached to something. That's the idea with colors. Another important part is balancing the contrast. Like, I don't think many of you can read what this is, right? Do you see what I see? It says basically. And even this post, like I think many of you saw this post, but you cannot read the surnames of it, right? But in this, you can see it. The main reason is compression, actually, not because of the contrast, but the contrast is good actually, but I brought this as an example to show how things can go wrong. Because of compression, the contrast may become sort of an issue, which is why I changed it later on to yellow. But yeah, even buttons, like contrast is not only about visibility, like it's kind of about this thing also, about the experience as well. For example, if you make both of these buttons this way, the neutral or the negative action and the positive action, like people, like you don't notice the difference between what these are, right? But when it's kind of a light color and this is more of a dark prominent color, you get the contrast, right? And even this slides, like you can see the contrast is very high, right? This text stands out, like each of these parts stand out on its own way, right? So that's about contrast basically. Yeah, and the next important part is typography, like choosing the right fonts. Like these are some very popular fonts, like which can be used for basically anything. So I included this so that you can like maybe use this in later on projects. So yeah, these are some very popular fonts which you can use. Like Lemon Milk is one of the favorite fonts which I have, and even Poppins. Like Poppins is something which is Poppins is actually a Google font. Even Breakleaf is a Google font. Lovella is also a Google font. Gilroy is not actually a Google font. Abit is also not. Those are custom fonts. But each of these fonts like have a different understanding. Like you can look at the difference between each of these, right? Like the way the G's are, the way each letters are, like everything is different. Like each font has its own appeal. That's the basic idea in using the fonts. And like our fonts is basically, you'll see it in the next slide, but the fonts basically give us a sort of a brand identity. That's why we use fonts. So this is our main font, Frutiger. Like these are all Frutiger. Even this is Frutiger actually. And yeah, the word creative is also Frutiger. Brittany is this font, and the fonts which are used for quotes. Sentinel is another. These two actually Rotaract main fonts. Truno is something which I included for Rotaract UCSC for the body font. All of these fonts are Truno actually. Like it kind of gives us something to stand out from the rest of the clubs and basically have our own unique identity. So that's the reason we use our own custom fonts with it. Yeah, and talking about typography, there are actually much more rules which something like kerning is there. Kerning කියන්නේ the optical alignment, like the space between each character, each individual character, like about how your brain perceives it. Tracking is a space between all of the characters, and then line break is the space between each lines. Like those are very much technical concepts which I will not delve into because obviously there's no time, and I believe that you guys can figure it out yourself by watching more YouTube videos and all. But yeah, so these are some guidelines I thought of giving you when using fonts. Don't use a lot of fonts in your project. Like for example, look at this. When you use a lot of fonts, like kind of each font gets your eye, right? Like, so you kind of tend to miss the message. You get distracted, which is why you should try to make it as simple as possible. Like, look, there's actually only 1, 2, and 3 fonts here. This is Bruno, this is Frutiger, and this is Britain. Only just 3 fonts. Like, you do not use a lot of fonts because that kind of distracts the people who are watching it. And also don't use more than one stylized font. Like, for example, Friday, the word Fridays is in Brittany and it's stylized, right? But if you use a lot of stylized fonts like that, even that's kind of distracting. And also designers hate these 2 fonts, like Papyrus and Comic Sans. Like, don't use these fonts whatsoever. Like, you can see these memes about it, right? Your project is not the exception. You cannot use Papyrus and even Comic Sans. Like, whatever the reason, like even if it's for an individual project, people say don't use Comic Sans. Like, these are some fonts which are hated by people. So try to avoid from such fonts as much as possible, because like if a designer sees it, they're going to get into a sort of a frenzy, and they will hate your design overall. So you do not want that happening. So yeah, as long as you do not use any font which designers hate, you're good to go. And another important thing is alignment and hierarchy, like about how you position your content. Like take a look at this, for example. When you read this, you will first of all read this, right? First you'll read this, then you'll read this, and then this. So basically that's because of the hierarchy, about how they arrange, right? Like this is given more sort of a prominence. And this is just basically just there in the background, right? And this is in the side. So you tend to go, and also you'll understand later on in hierarchy that there's something called a Gutenberg principle. I'll be explaining that as well. Yeah, so it basically shows about how your eyes lead you towards content. Yes, so when talking about alignment, yes, a very big mistake which people do. Like let's see the slide to show you that. Like when you click both of these boxes, you see that the boxes are aligned perfectly, right? And if you basically make it left aligned, see it's left aligned, but you see the space here, right? So that's something a big mistake which a lot of people do. When you're making alignment, you should make sure that you align each box. Like basically you have to move this to this place. That is called alignment, not how it was before. Like this is not proper alignment actually. Like you can see that there's a big space here, right? So that's something which you have to focus on when you're doing alignment. So don't place content everywhere, and don't fill the post with content. Like basically don't put each and everywhere. Like that's something which you do not want to do, right? But on the other hand, you can set a focal point. Like I'll show some examples. And yeah, like before, like the way most of the professionals do this thing is like they use a ruler. Like for example, suppose I want to make it right aligned. Like use this ruler here, and you can use this ruler, and you can zoom in and you can see, right? And then you can move it using a keyboard. Basically, that's how you have to do alignment. So you can use rulers and guides. Guides also some other features like these we all will be explained, I think, by the upcoming sessions. Alignment and positioning, like, and also try to match the background. I'll show some examples about this also. And negative space, which is white space also, like the white space around. These sort of provide a room. Like this kind of is a jam-packed slide, but the other side you can notice that it's very calm and peaceful, right? When there's a lot of things in the slide, it kind of distracts you. Like, so try to avoid that also. Okay, so moving on to some real world examples. Like you can see this post, right? It's perfectly left aligned. Even this, like it's all nicely left aligned. And this is perfectly justified. This is more of a center line thing. And this also. And you can see that the Aquaman character is basically interacting with this. Even in this, like this lady is basically drawing the text Vietnam. So that's something which you can do when you're designing content. But then again, the alignment is perfect. That's what you have to look at. The alignment matters a lot. Like suppose if this was somewhere around here, like not perfectly center or somewhere around here, you kind of feel something off about it, right? So you should try to avoid it because of that reason. Another popular tool, actually, like photographers actually know this rule, is something called rule of thirds. Like in the camera frame, like you can enable in your phone also, like the grid system. Like in a grid, you basically position along this line or this line, like even this picture you can see, right? If it touches the dot, it's a bonus, but yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to touch the dot. But yeah, as long as when you bring it like this, you kind of give a focus to the subject and the background as well. Like the subject stands out, like even in this, and like you can use that in posts also. Like you can use the rule of thirds, the grid system to design it. That's another thing which you can think about when you're designing posts. And leading lines. So this is something which is a lot of psychology, and it comes under Gestalt theory actually, which I'll link a video to it at the end. Yeah, so basically these smoke lines, the lines are drawn on top to show the lines. Basically, the smoke points towards the Adidas logo. It's some sort of a psychological marketing. So there's a lot of, like if you go to Adidas My Coach promotion campaign, you can see a lot of these examples. Like everything is more of a psychological sort of manipulation. So leading lines is one such example. Like you're directing the viewer's attention towards what you want them to look at. And there comes more examples. Yeah, like I said before, Gutenberg diagram in hierarchy. Like you see, generally, like you start from here, you're very less likely to go towards this. So they say that you do not put much important content over here unless you give it very much focus. Even this is called the strong fallow area, and this is called the weak fallow area. Like those are technical terms, but yeah, you do not put much important content. For example, look at Facebook. You see this, and then you see this directly. And then if you want to sign up, you look at these things. Yeah, so that's about Gutenberg diagram. And EZ pattern. EZ pattern is also another popular hierarchy principle. Like you look from left to like basically left to right. Even Gutenberg actually says that, but like you end basically here, you end their reading here. So it's kind of similar to Z pattern also, but yeah. And F pattern is like you can see in the Facebook, right? Basically an F. Yeah, so these are some sort of things how you can visually order your elements in your design. So that's something you can think about as well. And here's something which is really amazing. Like I think you guys can see it, right? About how to use hierarchy. Like when you keep the veil actually, the veil and the diver together, like it's not much attractive, right? But when you resize the diver and when you keep the veil like this, you get a more kind of attraction towards the post, right? And also using color and contrast. Like when you change, like in this, you do not see something different, right? But when you slightly change the color, it makes a big difference. And even in this card, like when you make the name big, it makes a huge significant difference. And using repeating elements, like for example, this tree and this tree are very much different, right? But when you make all the trees look the same, you get a bit different sort of an appeal. And using negative space, like more than this gives a more significant look and you get more attracted towards that pose. And alignment, like this, you can see that things are flying out of the pan, which is not what you want to do. If it's more perfectly aligned, it's more of a better hierarchy. And rule of odds, like making the things like stand like separated basically. And spacing, like this astronaut far away from the moon or the planet looks more appealing. And proximity, like if you keep one person far away, it kind of gives a different impression, right? So you try to make everything close together. And leading lines I showed you before as well. So you're kind of directing the view towards something. And rule of thirds, I showed this also before, basically aligning it to the right, basically the lines, the grid system basically. And perspective, like when you show a top-down perspective, it's much better than seeing this, like if you want to see the things on the table. And then there's another important thing, which is called consistency and repetition. Like take a look at these names. All of the ways the names are written are the same, right? The name is in black or white, and the surname is in pink, crimson. So that's like we maintain that consistency like throughout everything. And even within the post, there's repetition, right? Like each of these things are repeating basically, like the same style is repeating, the same heading style is repeating. Like those are repeating elements. Like even in the previous slide, these are repeating elements. This same tree is being used everywhere. So that's also kind of a psychological aspect which you can think about when designing things. And yeah, minimalism is something which is becoming very popular these days, trying to make things very simple to look at and aesthetically appealing. Like take a look at our Eid al-Adha poster. You can see it just includes a crescent and a cityscape of Colombo and the word Eid al-Adha, right? Like basically that's it. Even the IEEE one, basically it's something very simple. And even in this post, like the background is very plain. There's nothing much going around in it. So it's kind of more easy to look at it, and it's very aesthetically appealing to you, right? So that's the idea of true minimalism. Yeah, less is more. You do not bombard it with much content. You try to keep it as simple, stupid as possible. And yeah, talking about breaking the rules, like I said in the general meeting as well, sometimes you kind of tend to break the rules. But before you break the rules, it's actually okay to break rules. But before you go on breaking rules, you should know what rule you broke. The reason this post was approved is because I kind of wanted it to, like, it wasn't designed by me, actually, it was designed by one of my members. But yeah, I kind of wanted to show something like something wild, like wild things can happen basically. It's a new term, a new beginning. So anything is possible. So that's the basic idea for making it something wild and not following any alignment or anything like that. And even in this, like, although it's perfectly aligned to this, but it kind of looks really wild, right? And the bed mood, like the reason you can read this perfectly is because even though it's messed up, the bed mood stories, Rebecca shift, like it doesn't follow any sort of alignment at all. But still, you can read what it says, right? So as long as you know what you're doing and as long as you know what rule you broke, it's okay to break the rules. But before you do it, you should actually learn what the rules are. Yes, so like I said before, Gestalt theory, like you can try watching this video about Gestalt theory. I'll link it in the slides as well. So yeah, to get a better understanding like about how you can use psychology as well when designing marketing campaigns. Okay, so we reached the last part of today's session, the content phase, about how we basically give life to the campaign. When you look at design only, like design is not the only thing that attracts people, right? It should be about what the design tells us, like what the message is given by the post and the campaign, right? Which is why content is very crucial. Yeah, like I said before, there's a very important design principle which has turned into communication and system engineering principle, which is called keep it simple, stupid. It's called the KISS principle in short terms. Like instead of going something like this, you go straight to the point. Yeah, so I included a meme, which is kind of not funny, but yeah. In a chat, you basically write can't. In an email, you say I cannot. And in an essay, basically it says something which is broken English as well. But yeah, you get the idea, right? Instead of saying this, you can basically say I cannot. Like it's the same idea. We do not want to confuse the audience. We want to keep it as simple as possible. That's the idea with keep it simple, stupid. Yes, sir. So talking about creating a good caption. The caption should be very attention grabbing, right? And the important parts of a caption are the hook. Like the hook is what the people see at first, and the call to action or the message that we give through the caption. Yes, so talking about the hook, like look at these posts. Like I told before, basically we are doing the why, start with why principle in this. Like yeah, are you an inquisitive retractor who wanted to learn something but didn't know how to get started? So that's the idea. It's about why, and this is included in all three languages. Like actually, it's the same thing, kind of. Yeah. Or alternatively, you can use a quote like this, or something thought-provoking, or something fun. Like I'll show you a fun example later on. But yeah, so basically that's how you get the audience attention, by using the hook. Moving on to the message content, like the main part. It should be short and sweet. Like it's very, like look, it's just these 3 lines actually. Only these 2, and only this in this case actually. So it should be straight to the point and directly communicating the message. And yeah, you can invite the audience to do some action. Like for example, stay tuned for this event. Click on this link. Like we are inviting the audience to take some action, right? That's something which you can do in the message body. Or you can basically give what the idea is you want to give through the post, through the main section. So that's the basic idea about the message part of the content. And yeah, like I said before, the Jurassic Park example. So we gave the captions in this way, like starting with the story 65 million years ago, like this happened, and they were able to extract some dinosaur DNA, and with this DNA, they created dinosaurs, and then they started building a park, and they opened the park for the people. Like the opening park is the day the meeting held, actually. And once the event is over, like we mentioned about what happened in the event, like the grand opening happened, and the dinosaurs went wild, like in the movies, and the people worked together to escape just in time. So kind of like something like that. We are building up a story, so people get more attracted, and it's very attention grabbing. So that's something which you can use. Like these are very fun sort of an example which you can do with your marketing campaigns. Yeah, like this is a very popular quote. I think many of you have heard it. The pen is mightier than the sword. Like instead of, you can end a lot of wars by a pen, like without actually using a sword and fighting a war. Pen is very much more influential. Like writing something is very important, which is why content writers play a huge part, like in any campaign. So don't think that only designers get all of the hype. Actually, content writers do get a good sort of an important part in a campaign. And yeah, that's basically about this. So yes, 50 slides later, we reached the end almost. Yeah, so don't forget to let your imagination run wild. Like these are some sort of general tips like to give. Don't forget to practice. Like when you practice more and more, you become more perfect. It's a learning curve after all. Like nobody can be perfect in one day. If you want to break the rules, you have to definitely learn them first. And you can also kind of sort of get inspired by others' content. Like take examples from Dribble, Behance, or even other clubs, and what others post basically, or even other popular marketing campaigns like Apple's, Adidas, or any other campaigns. And while doing all of this, make sure to have fun, because it's a fun experience after all. You do not want to take it too much to your head and make it a fuss of everything. Just have fun while designing everything, and you'll enjoy the whole process. Like I said before, I'll be giving these slides to you guys so that you can check it. And this is our brand book, like Rotaract brand book. Like this basically explains about what we are doing, like about how to use all of the fonts and brand aesthetics, the brand backgrounds, logo usage. That's basically about the brand book. And yeah, some other videos and some articles. Behance and Dribble are also linked here so that you can go and check popular portfolios. And our Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages are also there. That's basically the end. So thank you guys for watching.